This is the geometrical argument for why New Jerusalem should be interpreted as a spaceship. It's based off of the passage in Revelation chapter 21 verse 16, which reads, "The city lies foursquare, its length the same as its width, and he measured the city with his rod, 12,000 stadia. Its length and width and height are equal." So for the length, width, and height to be equal, it should be interpreted as a square, especially since it specifies that it's foursquare. Now, depending on your translation of the Bible, the 12,000 stadia may have been translated into kilometers or miles for you. I prefer the ESV, English Standard Version Bible, because it maintains the original units, and therefore maintains the original number, 12,000, which is important. And the original unit of a stadia is a Greek unit of length that was approximately the length of a stadium, about 185 meters. There's some uncertainty on that number, but for all of my calculations, I've substituted used the value of 2,200 kilometers for this. So we're going to be considering what are the implications of New Jerusalem being a cube that has an edge of length 2,200 kilometers. So to get a handle on just how big that is, this is the equivalent radius of the Earth at the same scale as this cube drawing. So the radius of the Earth is about 6,380 kilometers. So at this scale, I can only include a very small portion of the Earth because it would just take up too much space, and I didn't want to make New Jerusalem very tiny. So just how big is this? Does this mean New Jerusalem can fit in the atmosphere? Well, you tell me. The Earth's atmosphere is only about 100 kilometers thick. At about 100 kilometers, that's where most people agree that space begins and the atmosphere ends, and 100 kilometers makes the atmosphere that thick. So this region here is the whole biosphere, where there's the atmosphere on top of the surface of the Earth, and that's how thin it is compared to the radius of the Earth. And that's also how thin it is compared to the edge length of New Jerusalem. Now, most depictions of New Jerusalem in art envision some sort of city amongst the clouds. That's where we get the idea that that heaven is a cloudy place up in the sky. However, there's a very clear problem here where this is obviously far too large to be anywhere near fitting in the atmosphere. In fact, the International Space Station orbits at an altitude of only about 410 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. So this distance here is about 410 kilometers. The thickness of the atmosphere is about 100 kilometers. So even if New Jerusalem somehow was on the surface of the Earth, the vast majority of it would literally need to still be in space. First part of the argument, but there's a subsequent part based on the fact that the scripture says that John was taken to a mountain. We'll just draw a mountain here. There's John on the mountain. Now it says that John was able to see the whole New Jerusalem, that some angel was showing John what New Jerusalem was, and he had some sort of golden rod to measure it. And John talks about there's gates on all the sides, so it seems like he was able to get a view of the whole thing. So, but simply in order for him to be able to see New Jerusalem from one location, since it was specified that he was taken up to a high mountain, New Jerusalem had to occupy some angle of his total vision. Now, if New Jerusalem was actually in the atmosphere, he would he would not be able to see the whole thing, just like none of us can see the whole earth while we're standing on it. But in order for him to be able to see it, it had to have a reasonably small angle of his vision so that he could see the whole thing. However, since the length of this is 12,000 stadia long, that means that the distance away, it had to be at least several hundred kilometers away in the region of space, just in order for John to be able to see it. So, depending on how big it actually looked to him, it would, maybe it was a little bit closer, a little bit farther away, but it was definitely much further away than the thickness of the atmosphere.